We live. It's Seed Talk, stuff to make your seeds walk. I got a very special guest on the show. Man, I've been waiting for, man, at least literally a year to get this brother on the show, man. It's an honor to have him on here, man. And we're going to be talking about hip hop. We're going to be talking about education and whatnot. Before we get started, man, I want to, encourage everybody to like and share this video so it can get exposure. People can, tune in and see talk, because we out here building a community, not just on social media platforms and whatnot, but we want it to actually transfer, and to be implemented into your home first, well, into yourself first, and then your home, and then your community. So sometimes in order for that to happen, is regulated and depends on resources. So we always taking donations. I'm at Cash App, $ Logic God Man, Venmo at Logic God Man. But I want to get to our special guest today. And Anthony Washington, welcome to the show. Welcome to Seed Talk. Why don't you just go ahead and start off, before we get into our topic, why don't you go ahead and tell them what you do, man, and where you grew up, what your background is, and what have you.
Man, well, first and foremost, happy to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Anthony Washington. I'm a local educator and still new entrepreneur on a business called Thoughts Cost. It's a supplemental educational service. Born and raised in Seattle, from the Central District. Went to Garfield High School. Was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to UW. Got hurt. Had to go away from education to find out that education was exactly where I was supposed to be. And I've dedicated myself to education for the last 9 years of my life. And it's been a beautiful journey. So last thing I'll say is I'm all over the place in education, but I do tend to focus on special education when it comes to policy and a lot of the work that we do at Thoughts Cost.
Okay. So this is the first time I don't know why. I should have known because of your height, the deepness in your voice, and just the sheer divine masculinity that you exude. I should have known that you was an athlete and you went to college. Can you talk about that a little bit of what you played in high school and what led to your career post-secondary, and what college you went to and whatnot?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was a late bloomer. I think I got to Garfield and I was about 5'10". For whatever reason, I wanted to hang out outside the school, skipping school. And then I noticed I grew about 4 inches. Then everybody's attention kind of changed towards me, right? All of a sudden, they were like, you should try out. Junior year comes, I grow another 4 inches. And so now I'm 6'8". And there wasn't
So you hooping.
Period. It was had to play basketball. And then over a period of time, I think the competitive nature in me actually started to take it serious. Ended up getting a scholarship to University of Washington. So I played on Coach Romar's first 2 years there. So his first year and his first tournament team.
Okay, so let's educate people real quick who ain't from Seattle. Real quick, I'm a proud Seattleite.
I know.
Yeah. I'm an honorary Bulldog. Some people might say I'm not. I worked at Garfield for 4 years underneath Ted Howard. I was security.
You worked there, man. Yeah.
I was there for 4 years. I graduated a class.
Yes,
I was there. I graduated. Tony Roten was one of many people that I graduated.
Yes,
you
were there with Ed. Ed was there.
Yes, I was there with Ed. I actually coached on the summer league team for a summer.
Okay.
With Garfield basketball. But he's talking about Ed Haskins.
Ed Haskins, Haskins.
Originally from Lakewood, aka Tacoma. Yeah. Well, it's not known as Tacoma, but Lakewood's right next to Tacoma. Let me. Pardon self. I'm sorry. I did not mean to do that.
You don't want that.
Lakewood is close in proximity to Tacoma. But yeah, I coached under Ed Haskins. He's also a good friend of mine. I actually went to his wedding also too when he got married. But and also taught an after school enrichment class, a men's group after school at Garfield when I was there. So I am a transplant from Ohio. A lot of people know that. I was born in Cleveland, raised in Cincinnati, came to Seattle when I was 12. So I consider myself, I have dual citizenship. I'm an Ohioan and a Washingtonian, a Seattleite.
You was out here for high school, middle school and high school.
Yeah. I went to O'Day. I graduated from Ingram, though.
Okay.
So I got a lot of history in Seattle. But I wanted to talk about Garfield real quick before we get into hip hop, because Garfield is so instrumental in Seattle hip hop. If we're talking about Ishmael Butler, aka Butterfly, who founded the group Diggable Planets and wrote all their lyrics for that first album, produced the whole album, or we're talking about Vitamin D, Derek Brown, started Tribal Productions and Ghetto Children, who produced for the likes of De La Soul. Who else? 50 Cent. He actually did the theme song for Power, the first one. Not the one that no one's feeling that Trey Songz did, but the original one that Cent and Joe did. Or even if we're talking about Jimi Hendrix, or we're talking about Quincy Jones, those are both two very, very influential artists and musicians that went to Garfield. So Garfield is I argue that
you ain't gonna talk about Macklemore, man.
Macklemore did go to Garfield.
Come on, man.
I swear to you. And I think Jake one didn't go to Garfield.
I don't know.
No, Jake didn't.
I don't want to.
But Top Spin went to Garfield. Barry. Okay. But anyways, I've made this argument before, and I made this argument during the I think the last time I saw you in the flesh was at the Garfield 100-year reunion. I made the comment that Garfield High School is the most important institution for Black people in Seattle. You know what I'm saying? I've only had one person say, I don't know, I think it might be Mount Zion or First A&M or something like that. I'm like, okay, well, okay.
You know how many members of Mount Zion attended Garfield, right? And added to that excellence of, look, I'm a Bulldog, so I can definitely talk for a million years about it. But I've always said the same thing. Like at one point it was when we were all concentrated in this area, right? You have this high school just beaming excellence. It was our way to kind of let people know. Garfield, to me, the Garfield to the CD, and I've always said this, has been the equivalent to like the University of Washington to Seattle, right? Can't have one without the other, at least not the innovation and all the things that come with the two respective areas. So Garfield is excellence. And as far as basketball, I kind of lost count, but we're up there as far as state championships. Rainier Beach, another amazing school.
I think Bethia got Garfield. I think
it's amazing. They had an amazing run, and they're still winning championships. But even with, I think in the last 20 years, they won 10, something crazy. Went on an amazing run. But even with that, in the last 10 years alone, Garfield has won about 5 or 6 to kind of pull away just a little bit. You would have to look that up, but I know we're still.
You got to look it up. I think I got.
We never got surpassed though. We were never got surpassed, but they were getting close. They were getting close.
Yeah, because I think Al Harrison he got some right.
5. I want to say he got 5. Yep.
Don't JoJo Rodriguez got?
Do we got 1?
Yeah, I think he might have 1 too.
I mean, as a player though, I feel like he has 2. I want to say. I don't want to disrespect the Super Dogs. Like Wardell Smiley, my freshman year, we were supposed to win. We should have won 2 years in a row. We didn't, but I want to say there's been at least 5 since I've been out of high school. You were there for how many did Ed win?
Oh, I think Ed won
2. I feel like you won 2. B Roy's won 3.
But I don't think Ed won 1 when I was there though. I don't think he won 1. He won 1 when I left though. Yeah. And Ed was an assistant coach for Bethia at Rainier Beach. This is all history. But I want to get back to your athletic career at Garfield and then transition to your athletic career at the University of Washington. Who did you play with on that Garfield team?
I played with Brandon Roy, Rookie of the Year, All-Star. To a lot of us, probably the best player not the most notable, right? I think we all can agree Jamal Crawford is the ambassador of Seattle basketball. No
Shout out
disrespect
to
to
Ranger
it.
Beach. Shout out
Yeah,
to Ranger Beach.
most definitely. But yeah, Brandon Roy, Will Conroy, who's the assistant, associate head coach at the University of Washington right now.
Shout out to Will Conroy. He got a ring. He got a ring in the D League.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, a couple of looks in the NBA as well. Had an amazing career. I think he's still the all-time leading assist leader at in the Pac-12, not just at UW. Who else was on? Marcellus Kemp. For some reason, he's lesser known, but he played similar to how Kobe played, was just a killer scorer. Jamal Miller had a couple axe murderers on that team as far as.
Didn't you play with Trey too?
Well, see, I sat the bench. So my junior year is weird. Yeah, Wardell Smiley, Trey Simmons, Ed Roy. Yeah, I was watching those guys play. So I was still learning how to play the game. That's why I always, like, when I look at the game of basketball, it's weird for me. Like, I can really look at it from a bench warmer that watched a bunch of great players, and then also I can look at it from, I was in the mix, right? Even if I'm not Brandon Roy or anything like that, but just being able to be on the court and playing some of those games that we played in, to be able to look at it from those two different perspectives is pretty interesting.
This is a really good conversation, and I appreciate that, man. That storytelling. I also appreciate your transparency and honesty, because people are like, "Yeah, I played for Garfield," and then you be like, "Nah, man, I was kind of on the bench."
Yeah,
but people don't understand, if you went to an established high school in Seattle, hey man, it was highly competitive. If you play football or basketball at O'Day or Garfield during a heyday, or O'Day or Beach, you probably wasn't getting a lot of playing time unless you were really, really good.
Let's put it this way. Like, just two things quickly. So my sophomore year, before I was on varsity, there used to be a room at Garfield for the varsity players, had the purple carpet in there. And on the walls, it was all the state champions in red letters, right? So we would get to peek in there, but you couldn't go in there unless you got on varsity, right? So your whole sophomore year, you're going to practice, you're doing all these different things. You would have to wait at the door for a jersey or something like that. You know, if one of the varsity players was cool with you, you might be able to go in here, but you weren't supposed to be in that room, right? It was kind of like a respect thing. And so making it just to be in that room was a big deal. Let alone playing, right? And so it's at that time, and I think this was around the time when it was starting to change, there was 20 people that didn't make the team at Garfield that if they wanted to, they could have went to another school and easily made the high school team. And that's no disrespect to us. I promise you, ask anybody from Garfield from like the 70s all the way up to the 2000s, they'll say the same thing. Like, you had players where, and it wasn't even a surprise that they wouldn't make it. That's how good the players on the team were. It was like, you can't really argue, you know, this guy making it over this guy, because he's great, but he's who he is, right? And so, yeah, Garfield, basketball is always, I know we're talking about hip hop, but just thinking about hip hop, the connection between the two, it's a pillar. I would say for some of us black men. It's always been like something at barbershops, barbecues, like it was something that you were always going to talk about. And so I remember kind of transferring from talking about players to kind of being annoyed. And man, you should be dunking, man. Yeah. And so it was something that culturally it drove a lot of these different professions, even, right? There was this excitement when you went to certain places just as a result of the basketball game coming up.
Yeah.
And it was cool to be a part of it. So.
I feel like I got to say this, man. We can't talk about Garfield High School, Garfield education, and Garfield, that gym, without talking about our ancestors, Joe Bland and Two Brick Rick, man. Shout out to them. Rest in peace to Joe Bland and Two Brick Rick, man. I just had to say that real quick, man.
Shout out to both of them.
Yeah, man.
I wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for Joe.
Yeah, and real quick before we go on to your stint at the University of Washington, we're gonna get to the meat of our topic. I
Mhm.
want to explain who Joe Bland was and who Two Brick Rick was. Joe Bland was like the gym facilitator or the gym specialist at and he set up the gym, he broke it down, he did all the scheduling, he did all that for the gym. He was
Mhm.
a long, like, just a fixture. But
Mhm.
he also had a dear friend and brother by the name of Two Brick Rick. We called him Two Brick Rick. And he's like, who built Garfield? And he would say, I did. You know what I'm saying? And he will always come up to you and say, man, you know, I want to link it. I want to link it. He'd ask you for $5. Reason why he was cognitively delayed. He had a learning disability. He has some cognitive disabilities. You know what I'm saying? We all have that person in our community. But the beautiful thing about it was how Joe took care of Rick.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I know this is just, I know I'm going off on a sentimental thing, you know what I'm saying? But they were, you know, because Anthony and anyone who knows Garfield and know the CD in Seattle, they know what I'm talking about. And and they know I had to make that pit stop.
You know,
That was appropriate and that was warranted. And now we can get on to the rest of the show.
I gotta stay there though, because both like Rick used to come into the classroom.
And we didn't care. We did not care.
Be on the board, right? Erase it.
Yeah.
And he knew the date. We would always joke and say, but it didn't matter. If he came into your classroom, it made your day. Right?
Rick had to do whatever he wanted to do. Always had that little shopping bag, running around with his stuff there.
Knew all the bus routes that he needed to get. Like, come on, man. Like, it just gave me goosebumps. But thinking about what I do right now, actually, and I never really put that together, but just thinking about special education, thinking about the different disabilities, thinking about families and having to find ways to support their students, support their kids that do have disabilities. Like Joe, I never really put that together. Like I understood that, but what you just said right now, and understanding now how the difficulties, and this is no disrespect, but just some of the things, just a lack of understanding of how to support, right? Somebody that can be as close as your brother, a kid. And I hear these things every day in my work, right? I hear all the frustrations, and so I can only imagine, not the frustrations, but just thinking about just the beautifulness of that, right? It takes a lot of sacrifice. Joe, I'm saying that to say Joe, he sacrificed for like all of us. I took Siobhan Bland. She I don't know if she remembers this. I was acting up. I ain't gonna say the teammates' names that it was, but I took her pizza. Ran with the pizza, went behind stage and ate it. We come out, we laughing. I didn't know Siobhan was related to Joe Bland. I did not know this, right? But I'd never heard Joe talk to me like this ever. He said, Anthony. I said, hair raised up, and I turned around. He said, come here. I said, oh, what did I do to Joe? Like, what? Right? He took me down to the locker room, and he didn't even tell me that Siobhan. You could tell, yes, this is my niece, you know, yeah, but you shouldn't be doing stuff like that, period. Right? So he let me know that I was wrong for even taking pizzas, and then he let me know, and that's my thing. Like, and I was just like, I know I ain't supposed to act like that, man. Right? And just that accountability, that reminder, he was that for so many different people. So when I say he sacrificed, when I say there was probably times where he was frustrated with all of us at one point in time, right? Neurodivergent, neurotypical, but that's the type of man he was. Like he gave himself to everybody. So I didn't mean to get all emotional, but
no, it's all good. And because Joe taught us how to deal with people who are cognitively delayed.
Yes.
I'm not going to say Black people do it better than any other community, but no community does the attention to mentally, you know what I'm saying, delayed people like the Black community.
And at the same time,
it's just different. It's unique.
Area expectation, Logic. I didn't mean to cut you off, but the main thing that I see in education, especially education, is a lack of expectation for these students, right? And one thing that you do see, even if they're right, there may not be the technical terminology tied to what's happening. You see an expectation that no, my kid can do this.
Yeah,
My kid's going right, and you need to figure it out. I that's something that you don't see in every community, and it's something I do see from the Black community.
As an educator, as a principal, specifically as a leader of a school, and being over the special ed department for so many years,
Mm-hmm.
I learned to appreciate the fact that we didn't use terms such as ADD,
Exactly.
ADHD. There was no such thing,
no such thing,
as
bro.
autism, Asperger's, or on the spectrum. Nah, man, you can do that.
You can do that. I mean, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
You're going to have to figure it out, which is still,
yeah.
The only, look, there was scaffolding involved, right? There was all of this terminology that I learned in college, or, oh, that's what that is? Oh, my auntie used to, oh, okay. So exactly what you just said. Like, I always tell people, I always encourage even parents that are thinking about possibly going into education, like, yo, you're already a teacher. You're already you're gonna learn just the labels tied to the things that you're already doing, right? And you know, there's still things that you need to learn on campus. I would never discredit that, but I love that you said that though. Some people don't realize how much they are empowering their children, even if there's a lack of information that they're still seeking, right?
Mm-hmm. And to add on to what you said, man, there are accommodations, like, you know, in the professional and the formal, you know what I'm saying, ranks of school, they're called accommodations. Like special ed kids get us accommodations.
Yep.
But we really didn't have accommodations. The only accommodation, I would say the main, not the only one, but the main accommodation you have for people who were mentally delayed is, hey, man, now you know they special, man. Don't be treating them like that, man. Don't be pulling them, don't be picking on them. But other than that, you was expected, you know what I'm saying, to do it the way that you could do it.
To do it, exactly.
Whether we was playing Flyers Up, whether we was playing baseball, whether we was playing hopscotch, whether we was playing tag, whether we was doing whatever, your accommodation, you get to do it how you do it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? But talk about the UW real quick and what your experience was there, and who you played with there, because I know you you was on that infamous Romar team that was really good, that went to the Sweet 16, right? When
I was the year before.
Oh, that was a year before. So who did you play with at the UW?
I played with arguably, if I looked at my top 10 players, I would put three of these guys in there, Seattle players, but Doug Wren, Big Bro, Brandon Roy, Nate Robinson, Will Conroy, Mike Jensen. I don't know if you heard of Mike Jensen from Kent. Bobby Jones, my brother from Compton, who's now a filmmaker. When you think of somebody that's transitioned from being an athlete to just kind of expanding themselves, Bobby Jones is a filmmaker, writer, just an amazing dude. Yogi, he's turning into a yogi right now. During UW, honestly, I look back at that time, and that's part of the reason why I felt like I had to go into education. I was on a college campus, had my education paid for, playing with all these great players, and you know, I ended up getting hurt, not really understanding how to cope with that, how to process and grow from it, and didn't really know how to express my emotions in a positive manner. And I feel like I lost an opportunity, right? And at the same time, and this is not a knock on the coaches, but I don't really feel like I had that support from adults in the way I needed it. But yeah, I think my time at UW, it was still fun. Got to play in the NCAA tournament one year.
And did you play with Todd?
No. Okay. I'm 40. Todd McCullough, he was those were the tournament years. Honestly, those 2 years, it was Donald Watts.
Okay.
McCullough.
So he played with Donald. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
I know Donald too. He's a friend of mine too. You know, we
doesn't get enough credit, right?
Yeah, he doesn't, man.
He
And
doesn't get enough credit.
he's a little overshadowed, rightfully so by his pops, though, man. Come
I
on,
mean,
man.
no, yeah, clearly. But I mean, just thinking about, if you think about at the time when we all got to high school, we were at the age where we were really paying attention to basketball. Like, you have to give a lot of credit to like Doug, right? Coming back to school, coming back to home to go to UW, to get us to go there. But then even thinking about the last tournament teams before Romer got there, Donald Watts was on those teams, right? And so I think we saw the Huskies good, right, going into high school. And I know for me, the reason why I picked UW was to make them good again, right? And so I wouldn't even think like that if it wasn't for those tournament teams that Donald Watts was on. So that influence that he had at UW, I truly do think that played a part in us even thinking about, considering going to the Dub.
Man, see, man, I'm nerding out right now, man. You got me, man. I admire you so much. I'm nerding out, man. I got so many questions. One last question, man. Who else was looking at you, man? What were your other options when it talks about, being a D1 elite athlete? What other schools could you have gone to?
I remember when Coach Hodges first got to UW, I didn't want to go past the Mississippi or something stupid. I didn't want to leave the West Coast. So Syracuse, I turned Syracuse down. Kansas, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Clemson, UTEP, and there was one more school in California. But my top five were mainly Pac-10 schools, and it was weird having to call like Ernie Kent, call these guys and tell them I wasn't coming to the school, but my mom and my dad made me do it. Like, I heard a lot of people didn't even, I'm going here, you're going to hear about it in the newspaper and that's it. But I remember thinking, like, why do I got to call these people? And again, now I understand. Like, it's the respectful thing to do. But yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your relationship with hip hop, man. When did your, because I'm just going to say collectively, I'm just saying casually, everybody in the hood listens to hip hop.
Yeah, everybody.
What made your relation? When did you find out that your relationship with hip hop as a student, as an athlete, and as an educator was different? When did you find out that it was different?
So, and I can say this. Some people say this about their uncles, and they I don't know if they're really telling the truth, but my uncles are legendary B-boys, right?
Okay.
So
I didn't know this. Who are your uncles?
T-Ski and Spade, right? Okay. And so you have to. I'll send you a couple of links. But if you ask cats from the 80s, like they'll know Anthony Peters, Truth.
Yeah.
That's now. But they. So I was my uncle. I remember he used to always tell me, man, I used to have you up on Broadway, man. You used to be up on Broadway. So I've always been around like hip hop. Yeah, like I remember thinking I was doing that type of stuff. I wasn't really bopping like they were. But my uncle, he went to prison. And so I was embedded in hip hop, but there was only one type of hip hop that I could listen to at the time. I know I don't want to take too much time, but I remember my mom and my dad, like Houdini. I could listen to Houdini. I could listen to Public Enemy. I could listen to KRS-One, Boogie Down Productions. I could listen to all of that. So I had this, and then if I was with my other uncle, I would get the Spice One and the E40 and all that other stuff. But I just remember my uncle sent me an Africa from prison. And I wrote about this when I first started writing, and you actually encouraged me to write. But I wrote about this, and I'll never forget it because it was like, I think it was Chuck D. I can't remember who it was, but I just remember like, hold up, I got an Africa with the lion in the middle of it. And I was tripping off of it. And I just remember rappers that I was listening to had this Africa in it. And they were talking about teaching. And so then years later, obviously, I like I said, I got into Snoop Dogg and all of that type of stuff, unfortunately, to a degree. And it's always been with us. It's what we listened to before the games. We chanted it before we went on the court, right? I remember 50 Cent was that guy when we was at UW, Blueprint, Jay-Z Blueprint. We listened to the whole album sitting in the locker room, right? We embodied these different personalities that they were bringing to the table. And that's always stuck with me. Like even now in my life right now, I listen to things with not realizing it, but when you're listening to certain rap music, when they're talking about themselves or talking about this and that in a positive manner, sometimes Jeezy he talk about some things, but the positive affirmations within the music are something that I embrace, right? And so I actually utilize rap music to motivate me in my business venture that I'm currently in.
Yeah, talk more about that. Like, how do you, as an educator, how do you use hip hop in when you're teaching? Because you said you teach special ed.
Yes, special education.
So
So
how do you use hip hop, you know, to teach and whatnot?
So one of the beautiful things that I had the opportunity to do, I got to work at the EEU in early childhood. I was in a kindergarten class and I was doing a study trying to figure out how to talk about race, how to talk about introduce neurodivergent and neurotypical classrooms to Black culture, right, and things like that. And I was like, man, hip hop, it seems like that's the perfect thing to use, right? Because you could use instrumental music and just, okay, we're just moving, right? Or just notice the fact that you start moving when you hear the music, right? And so for little kids, I thought it was like this perfect opportunity to like, yes, let's right. And so I got a book. It's a beautiful book. It's called Hip Hop Files. One of the things I learned was with little kids, you don't necessarily have to have lessons with a bunch of talking, right? And images actually work 10 times more. So being able to give these young people images and videos of people dancing. This is just an example of one of the pictures. I was able to actually bring Black culture to the classroom, right? Teach the kids about an art form, which then we started to dig backwards, and they were actually able to learn about a couple more art forms. This is in kindergarten, and that was a way to actually introduce not just to Black culture but Black history, right? So that's just an example in early childhood, and seeing the kids gravitate to the music and then to the history, right, of Black people seamlessly without even thinking about it. And the example might be, I don't have the name of the breakdown. It's the most common breakdown ever. You know what I'm talking about, right? But then to play where it came from, and then
The source.
but to be able to explain, right, that something was utilized over and it was taken out of and then apply that to history to little kids and get them to understand, like, oh, you should respect things in your past, right? And so doing lessons like that, like being able to teach history, as far as young men in some of the youth groups, some of the classes that I worked in where it's just Black males, and this is not just the negativity, but one of the most powerful lessons that I ever taught. Mike Brown was just murdered. Dave East had a song called "Don't Shoot," and being able to take the lyrics, print them out, and basically have the kids listen to the song. First, have a reflection, then let's listen to it again and look at the lyrics and really break it down. But then have these text to self connections. So whether it was them themselves that had been impacted by it, or they had witnessed something along those lines, or their parent, or so there's so many different ways to use hip hop. Like I've seen a number of different people. One of my friends, he's an entrepreneur. He actually uses hip hop to teach vocabulary, and he has a brilliant program called Rhyme with Reason, where he takes rap lyrics, and there might be a particular word that you're learning about in that lyric, and he hits you with it. It could be Drake, it could be anybody, and he uses that to learn a word, to break down a word, and you go through this whole process. And so I think we're just now getting into the point where it's not taboo to use hip hop. Because I remember when I first started playing certain rap music, even though the kids play and listen to it, but trying to get them to think about what's really being said in the song. at one point in time wasn't necessarily the smartest thing to do, especially if you know the language in that song isn't favorable to rules in the school, right? And I remember getting pushback at one point in time. Maybe, you know, all schools are different, but yeah, I mean, it's just countless ways to use rap music.
Yeah, I've used hip hop for professional development when I'm teaching other teachers.
Talk to me.
Yes, like for instance, I'll teach a workshop. Like we'll have what they call data day, and that's a professional development day. We'll meet as a group, all the teachers and all the staff and whatnot, and the admin, and then we'll break off into these smaller sections and these sessions where you teach. And one of the classes that I taught a workshop and offered is like, how do you take hip hop and create literary devices and just, you know, make students, you know, more competent, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to language arts. And so I'll take two songs. Like one of my favorite lessons that I like to do is I'll take Common and Lauryn Hill's Retrospect for Life, and I'll take Diggable Planet song. I forget the name of the song offhand, man. It's a song about a guy who gets an abortion. Just about abortion. But I use both those songs to not only pull out the breadcrumbs to pull out like all the literary devices in there, like what's their thesis statement, like what is he saying, what is Common saying? Because Common in the Retrospect for Life with Lauryn Hill, he's talking about how it's a letter, basically a letter to his unborn child or his aborted child. You know what I'm saying? And he basically decides that as a man, as the co-parent or the person who co-created the life, that he wanted to go forward with it, you know. But it's kind of like to be continued. It's a beautiful song, man. It's a beautiful song, Retrospect for Life. But then Butterfly, aka Ishmael Butler, is just basically talking about, you know, one of his homegirls that come to him and she's thinking about getting an abortion, and she goes to get an abortion and there's protesters there. And he's basically providing a thesis statement to say, how's that different than us sending our children to war? So it's okay. It's not okay for you to kill the child when it's in your womb, but it's okay to kill the child once it's born. And it's I think it's called Les Femelles Fatales or something like that. I think that's the name of the song for Diggable Planets. But I take those two songs and, you know, I put them up against each other, and I encourage the teachers to create arguments for both of them. And then I say, you know, women's reproductive rights comes up, you know, periodically throughout history and time.
Yes, sir.
So if you're, you know, examining Roe versus Wade, both those songs are dropping breadcrumbs. Historic event. Those are Easter egg. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, just little stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Can you talk about real quick, like, you know, some of the pushback that you've gotten, you know, for you know what I'm saying, using hip hop, you know, support lessons, like
a lesson. It's titled "Nigga," where I break down the word "nigga" and I show how it's used in the Black community over a period of time. Right, so I start with the Last Dead Poets. Niggas are scared of the revolution. Right, where he's clearly using it a certain way, and then at the end he says, you know, I love niggas, niggas are me. Right, so then the next one is Chris Rock. I throw Chris Rock out there. In his bit, Black people versus niggas, right? And then I use YG, my nigga, where in the song he's talking about his niggas, but if you listen to everything he's saying, I had the kids do this, right? Is he using nigga in a positive or a negative way? And although he's endearing, he's talking how much he loves these guys. What are they doing in the song? Like, you listen to the whole song, what are they doing, and is it being used in a negative manner? Now, I'm not doing this to tell kids to use it or not use it, right? But if we know that there's power in words, and we know negative, teaching more connotations, I think it's a perfect word, and that's a perfect song to utilize, right? And so I've had parents at different years tell me. Actually, my auntie even told me she didn't want her kid listening to that and talking about that. I've had teachers, I've had a principal, sit in and was really uncomfortable with it, and I was a little uncomfortable, but I still taught it. So there's been times where I was asked not to teach that lesson, and it's unfortunate because they're focusing more on the word and not really understanding what the meaning of the actual lesson is. In hip hop, there's a bunch of songs that you can utilize to find, to teach connotation, right? And so, yeah, that would be my main example, but also one that I'm most proud of. I remember UW actually supported me. That was because I developed it when I was in school. But I just remember, I want Professor Massey Dixie. She supported me in that, and I actually was trying to make her uncomfortable. So it was weird. Of all the people that I wanted to be uncomfortable, she was actually the most excited about the lesson, and people in the community were the people telling me not to use it. So another example, trying to think of a positive, because I know I keep thinking of negative, like shootings and things like that. Poetry, right? We had in one of my classes, we would do battles. Another class, it would cause, you know how that could be, right? We all just gonna bust the rhyme. Let's leave the insults out of it. But I think that's the easiest way to go about doing it. It's an easy form of expression that most kids are familiar with, right? And so the beauty that comes out of it, to me, is something that I've always embraced, because there's an honesty behind it. And I think it comes from the familiarity with hip hop, right? Which allows them to really run with the art form as far as poetry goes, because I think it's one and the same. Oh, Jay-Z. I have a love-hate relationship with Jay, but the lesson that I teach or try to introduce it as poetry, as an art form, it says Picasso, baby. I know you're familiar with that. And his push to really have rap music recognized as an art form, respected, because it is, but it's right, respected on the same level. And so that's also one of my favorite lessons to do.
Yeah. I feel like the oppressor and the system, white supremacy, institutional racism, they understand sometimes racism is smarter than the people it oppresses. Sometimes.
Can be.
Sometimes.
Can be.
And when it is, they understand how we can weaponize certain things. When we start to weaponize it, they start to criminalize it. I have a term that I want to say to you, and I want you to tell me what are the first thoughts and reflections that you have when I say it. The criminalization of hip hop. When I say that, what is the first things that come to your mind?
Honestly, NWA. That's the first thing that hit my head. Drugs, the selling of drugs. See, and it's weird. I noticed that I'm more or less thinking about us, but switching it up. Just how some of those lyrics could have been looked at more as revolutionary, and they were made to be criminal. Like even F the police, right? If you look at what's happening in France right now, are those people really wrong for causing civil unrest as a result of what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were the establishment, would you make that seem like the worst thing you could possibly say? Something you had to ban, right? So I mean, I guess NWA first. Then there's a sense of looking at us and kind of blaming us, but then kind of switching it up and saying, obviously, there's some accountability for us continuing to talk about certain lyrics, but the twisting some of this stuff, the twisting, right? And then there's also a push from these corporations to make that type of music, and that's not. I'm not one of the people that just ends that, but for me, that's kind of where my mind starts to go.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know, when I think about, to add on to what you said, man, thank you for that. When I think about the criminalization of hip hop, that's why, you know, education is so important.
Agreed.
When it comes to hip hop, is that we're educating ourselves on not only the history, but all the different art forms and musical genres that came together to make hip hop.
Exactly.
And when I think about the criminalization of hip hop, the first person I think about wasn't necessarily a hip hopper.
Talk to me.
Billie Holiday. I think about how she sung that song, Strange Fruit.
Strange Fruit. Yep.
And federal agents followed her around, harassed her. And I would make the argument, they literally killed her for singing that song. And she was and how I tie it to hip hop through education.
Talk to me.
She was the first Tupac, man. She was the first Tupac.
Talk to me. Talk to me.
She would not stop singing that song.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
She would not stop singing that song. And they were coming into her and they were killing her. And they tried to say, in a roundabout way, they said, okay, we're going to criminalize, you know, jazz music. And they were like, what? It's like, yeah, the reason why we're going to do that is because a lot of these jazz musicians, Dizzy Gillespie, Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday, they're on drugs.
Yep.
And they're doing these drugs where there is jazz music, there's drugs. So, you know what I'm saying? We're drawing the connection. So that became a profile.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they do hip hop the same way.
Yep.
When brothers and sisters and people, even though they're rapping under a pseudonym or a moniker, just like, you know what I'm saying, Sylvester Stallone, you know what I'm saying, acted under the pseudonym in the character of Rambo.
Yes, sir.
That don't happen for hip hop. They criminalize
Oh,
it.
no, you're one of the same.
If you're doing crimes in your record, oh my Lord, you better hope to God you don't have a court case or a RICO trial or federal case, because they are going to use your lyrics against you.
What do you think about that? Like, do you think that's fair? Do you think that's, you know, because that's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
That's a tough one, right? But I agree with you. I fully agree with you. But I always think about what Young Thug, right? Isn't that's one of the records?
We could be talking about Tekashi 6ix9ine. That included a lot of snitching too.
Yep.
I think about a lot of stuff, man. And I also think about Bobby Shmurda, man. I think about the stuff that we nod our heads on hip hop music. That one song that he had when he threw the hat up in the air.
Hot Boys. Yeah.
Came down. That song was fire.
Fire.
Man, I really like that song. However, I can tell you some people who didn't like that song. The people who he was bragging about and mocking that got murdered.
Yeah.
Those were real people who got murdered in that song.
Yeah.
The family of those people do not like that song. And he ended up getting indicted, bro, and did some time based on the lyrics in that song. Also, when we talk about, I know you, let me say this one last thing.
Very good.
One of the coldest examples was DJ Drama, man.
Yep.
This man went I think he might have went to prison, but he definitely got indicted on federal charges for mixtapes.
Yeah.
Like, what other musical genre can say they got in trouble by the feds for selling their music?
I mean, and that's tough because you brought it up two different ways, right? Where on one end, you shouldn't get in trouble for rapping about something, right, that you may have saw when you were a young person, that you may have experienced in some way, shape, or form, where you're not directly talking about exactly what you did, and it's there's evidence and blah blah. I do not think, right, that's so if you're just rapping and you happen to be from a certain place and hey, look, man, that's not even real, bro. That was blah 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 blah. It happened to right. That's different than what you said about Bobby Shmurda. Like, and this is tough because I just told you I got a lot of family that's been to prison. Like, and there's always a sentiment of wanting a person free, right? And then just thinking about the history of the criminal justice system, the Black life. So we're not, and that's a whole nother. Which is also tied to education. So there's that element of that, but it's like, you're terrorizing, you're rapping about terrorizing the neighborhood. That we can't allow and continue to think that that's cool, right? And even being scared to say that tells you how much the neighborhoods have been terrorized by it, where you feel weird to even talk against it, right? Because and again, I know some of it is these are our family members in some cases. These might be right, whatever the case. But I just think that we have to talk about it rather than we can't judge the next generation. I actually think back to when they were burning the tapes, and I'm not. Now listen, look, Doggy Style was the first. I shouldn't have been able to buy it, but it was the first album I ever bought. All right, it was literally the first Nas. If I Rule the World, it wasn't. What was the name of that album? His second album, not Illmatic. Anyway. About those two albums, it's like 93, 94, right? So when I say this, I listen to all of that. Can't listen to it in front of the kids. I still listen to it in certain situations. But I know that, I can cuss on here.
Yeah.
Bitches ain't shit. Mm-hmm. Hoes and tricks. So, like, first of all, I shouldn't have been listening to that at 10. But the beautiful beat that it's on, that's gonna stay in my head, right? Right, and so Blaxploitation, like we have to start holding. I just don't like saying it because it just feels weird to say it, but we have to be honest about the influence that hip hop the negative influence that hip hop can have on us, right? Yeah. And that's tough. In the classroom, you see it, you hear it, right? But trying to use that because you understand, because when you were in high school, you were listening to a certain type of music, you can understand it. And I think that's what pulls me back always. Because as much as I would understand the burning of the CDs and all of that type of stuff, I would also listen to the music and hear that, okay, there's a lot of drug addiction right now. It's telling you something. If these are the people that are being followed, if these are the people that are being listened to, there's still value in the music that we don't understand and agree with, right? It's talking to us. And so it allows us to actually have an inside view into what our kids are into. And how can you pull out of that and kind of counter it? You know, right? And so that's, look, I always come full circle with hip because I love it so much. And I think because I'm so tied to it or just embraced it for basically my whole life, I always try to find a way to bring it back positive, right? And at the same time acknowledge the misogyny, the genocidal, like there's a lot of things about hip hop that just need to be addressed and identified. So
to add on to what you're saying, man, I hear a lot of what you're saying is hinting and pointing towards censorship. And I'm just saying, you said the burning of tapes. That's what happened. I'm against censorship.
Got you. My bad. And I didn't mean to. It wasn't true.
No, it's all good. I'm anti-censorship, but I'm pro-education, which is the theme you know what I'm saying, of this episode, as an educator and as an artist, especially as a hip hop artist, a producer and a recording artist, I don't rap about certain things because I have a responsibility, because I know. I know. Also, I'm able to listen to certain things, and I can kind of be dismissive of it. It's a privilege. It's an earned privilege, though, because again, I know I'm educated. However, there's some kids, it's like a gun. Some adults are like kids. You can't play with that. Why not? You play with it. No, because you don't know how to use that. That's a weapon. And until you know how to use it, it is a weapon, and until it becomes a tool. You know what I'm saying? So some people you do need to censor the music from. You need to be like, nope, you cannot listen to that because you are not educated. You don't know what it means. If you're listening to NWA, she swallowed it. It don't matter. She don't bite it. I can't listen to that song now, Anthony, without cringing, bro.
Trust.
It's talking about sexual assault. It's talking about rape. It's talking about pedophilia. It's all bad, bro.
It's bad. Oh, no.
As much as we celebrate NWA for being like F the police, these were the very, very people, like you said, who terrorized the community.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where we were like, man, I'm so glad they had to sit down, man. I'm not so much a pro law enforcement, but I'm so glad that, you know what I'm saying, Pookie and Dookie got arrested.
I could actually think, I'm not going to say this person's name.
Yeah.
But I can think of a time in high school, and anybody that hears this that went to Garfield that was in the city knows that a person had people running home after school for a couple of weeks until, you know, the person actually did end up getting locked back up. But just thinking about that and how we joked about it, right? The normalization of it is what's scary about it, right? And I always look at it like, do you understand if that fear, if that was utilized in the way it was supposed to be utilized, right, for the protection of the neighborhood, that energy was supposed to protect the neighborhood, and I truly believe at one point in time it that's what it was doing.
That's a good point. That's
you know what I'm saying? So it's
a lot of the quote unquote gangsters or gang members or people who are I call them street families. They're soldiers.
They're soldiers, man.
They're soldiers.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing stuff that soldiers do.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? They're acquiring revenue. You know what I'm saying? They're businessmen. They're but they're also businessmen to get the weapons to protect the community.
Yes.
That's why a lot of immigrants started, you know, gangs.
Yep.
Or street families to protect themselves.
Yes, sir.
But I think the disservice that our society does, and I know we got to go into our plan of action and give the audience some homework, you know what I'm saying? But one of the disservices that they do is they censor our music, and then they take away the opportunities to educate the public on the music, and they take away our support systems and our safety nets.
That's it.
I think we should be able to listen to anything we want to within reason. However, we need some kind of lesson and some kind of educational support system to explain what the heck we are planning in our young people's minds.
Agreed.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that we should allow our kids to listen to anything until we're ready to take them through the stages. Like you said, scaffold. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? To scaffold. Like the rungs on the ladder don't start at the top.
Mm-hmm.
It starts at the bottom.
At the bottom. Most definitely.
So like when we're letting kids listen to like NWA stuff that is like dealing with a lot of drug addiction, a lot of mental illness, that's like starting, like dropping a kid off on the top rung.
Honestly, like to think about that, to think about what you just said, because there was the art form, right? That I was in love with, you know, bopping, graffiti, and all that type of stuff. But then I think because of the limitations that my mom did put on, what I could listen to at a certain time. I personally had a foundation of self-destruction. We're headed for self-destruction. You know what I'm saying? So as much as I listened to all this other rap, my foundation was in the Chuck D's and the Rakim. Like, so it's interesting that you say that, but that's exactly how we should treat it. Like, if you're listening to this, you got to listen to where it came from to actually understand to even how it got to here. And I when we teach history, the history of hip hop, I think we go one way or another, right? And I feel like we got to start finding a way to tie that into each other. Like, even, why does this music sound the way it sounds right now?
You know the reason why, though, Anthony, to add on to what you're saying, because they don't truly respect it as an art form.
Agreed.
They respect it as a commodity, something to be consumed to make money off of. But I have to own up. I'm gonna self-check myself right now. Part of the problem is because of the artists I used to be. I've been a teacher for 25 years. It's only been within the last, I would say, 7 to 10 years that I would just be bold and be like, yeah, I'm a rapper.
Yeah.
I would be like, I'm a poet. Oh, I write. No, I'm a rapper. I rap. I'm a poet. They're all different things. They have different, facets. You know what I'm saying? I do
the stigma, right?
Because people didn't respect it.
Got you.
And that's on me. That was my hang up. It's not anymore. You know what I'm saying? There was a stigma. That's like, oh, you do that ignorant stuff. Yep. That's not real poetry. But I'm like, man, that's Dr. Seuss, man.
Yeah.
That's Dr. Seuss. That's all that is. That's Shakespeare. You know what I'm saying? If we gave these white educators, pretty much predominantly white men, who make the curriculums that, set the standards and the value systems that, are supposed to be indicators of our success in this society. If we gave them a test based on hip hop music and culture, they would be in special ed classes.
Period. Yeah. Like, for real.
I'm here to say, man, you know what I'm saying? Remember when Andre 3000 said at the award show, the South got something to say? Man, hip hop got something to say, man.
Period.
And we got to understand that the foundation, the elements of beatboxing, breakdancing, DJing, graffiti, and rapping, those I call those like the
five pillars.
The five pillars. Those were done to replace violence.
Yep.
And they were definitely establishing a patriarch. But with education, we have to say, man, there's a reason why Salt-N-Pepa is the greatest female rap group ever, and that's a disservice to the art form, because they really weren't that good, man. They weren't.
No, they were. I don't want to disrespect.
No, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, so you don't want to say it. It was sexism and misogyny that blocked some of our greatest women hip hop artists.
MC Lyte. Whenever they talk about Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, and I'll be like, bro, when are you gonna say MC Lyte? I still to this day, man. There's more. I'm not even, but like I never understand when they talk about the best women rappers. Nobody ever says MC Lyte, and to me, and this is I don't mean to even sound like this, but there was no sense of the way she approached rap. There was no sense of man or woman. I never even, there was never even a thought like that. Like, and I'm saying that because with Queen Latifah, right? There were certain times where she made it a point. When MC Lyte talked about women, just like she talked about, like, so I never even understood how you couldn't, like, I don't see how the sexism or misogyny would even play a part in that. Because if you're really listening to really all of these women, they're hitting you with dumb bars. But like MC Lyte is, I'm probably sound sexist as heck, but MC Lyte to me is the most disrespected rapper, like a male or female of all time. I just have a special place in my heart. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I did a poll some years ago of the greatest women rappers in history, and I did a tournament. I used to do tournaments, and she won the tournament.
Oh, okay. I think I'm probably dealing with.
I think she was in the finals with Lauryn Hill, But
you're
my
dealing
point
with a different group though, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I feel like you're dealing with some real hip hop heads.
No, I hear you. I hear you. No, I hear you. No, that definitely is contextual. But even when we talk about that, though, Anthony, there has to be an educational component, because what you just now said is based heavily because MC Lyte didn't write a lot of her lyrics.
Wow. See, you just broke my heart, bro. I gotta go.
LL Cool J wrote.
I gotta go, dog. I gotta go. I didn't know that.
LL wrote MC Lyte's verse for Self-Destruction. He
so
wrote.
I'm gonna say this then. LL Cool J deserves that much more credit because he could write without you telling. That hurts my heart, bro.
But I'm saying that's the power of sexism and how we've done a disservice, and how education in hip hop. See, you just now got educated. How that plays a role. And Big Daddy Kane wrote a lot of her lyrics also. Yeah,
you're breaking my heart, dog.
Yeah,
hey, Logic, you're breaking my heart.
But here's the deal. Big Daddy Kane also wrote for Biz Markie too.
Look,
so
I knew that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that's what we do a lot in hip hop. We like to point out all the shortcuts that women do, but that's not to say that MC Lyte couldn't write her own lyrics, because she could have.
Oh no, I know, and she can still ride a beat.
Yeah,
you still gotta be able, So, but so look, I'm just being honest though. That's for me. Like, I'm a weirdo with basketball, and who I have all these little criterias. Like, you're still a great artist. You're still a great, and Lauryn Hill don't count in this, because I know she's gonna try to hit me with. She don't count in what I'm about to say, dog. Don't even try to hit me with it. But when you talk about MCs and I'm talking about the best, if you're not writing in your heyday, maybe when you're older, outside of your 10-year span, and some young cat writes you a little bar or something like that. But even then, I don't think like a Nas or none of them cats are doing it. I don't think I could count. I can't, like Drake, I can't rank him in the top 5 hip hop artists because he doesn't write all his bars. Like, some of his best bars, he did not, like diss songs. He didn't write his own, like, so it's not just women. I knock men. Like, if you're not writing your own bars, though, I can't really. I respect you because, like I said, I've tried to rap, and I could write. I could write poetry. I feel like I'm a. I don't want to say I'm a poet, but I can write. I could write.
You're a poet.
But trying to put that on, I got to listen to a certain beat. It has to be a certain speed, and then it messes it up because that's not what the rhyme pattern is calling for. So I know it's not easy, regardless. It's you have to be immensely talented. Like, so no credit away. But you saying that, for me, the legitimacy that I put her on, and that is patriarchy. That is and I said it. I feel sexist as I'm trying to explain myself. Damn, that's crazy.
I want people to take this the right way.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good. And what I mean, I'm not saying it's all good to be sexist. It's all good to point out your blind spots.
Yes, sir.
Because it's telling you and other people that, hey, I have the opportunity to work on it.
Trust me.
You know what I mean? You have to and once we get educated on hip hop, we have to understand that we need to create the opportunity for it not to be patriarchal and not to be matriarchal, but for it to be egalitarian. It can flow, and we don't even want to talk about the youth, how the youth, like kids, like when we talk about, like usually Criss Cross comes up, Little Bow Wow, but most of them weren't, I mean,
Shaheem.
Oh
my God.
There are a lot of hip hop artists who started when they were really young. Like, we hear the stories about Nas. They say he was like 16, 17.
Yep, 17.
Talk about Rakim, he was like 15. Yep. But they're still identifying as grown men. That's my point.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is hip hop needs to create the pathways to not only have balance of the NWAs and the Wu-Tangs, or, the X-Clans and the 2 Live Crews, but it also needs to create opportunities for everyone to be successful in the art form. And we might have to go through a period, and a lot of people might disagree with me, where there might have to be a stage of affirmative action and reparations for the rappers and the artists who have been marginalized and didn't get as much exposure. That includes women.
So that I see what you're saying. And for me, I feel like there's also another route there of the record labels, right? Really starting more record labels, but with the intention of affirming, right? These different and that hasn't happened. That's something that hasn't happened. And you would think, just based on society right now, that might be something that could happen, but I think it's coinciding with a lack of when I say information, there's a plethora of information, but a lack of deciphering that information and actually being able to use it, right? Because you're hearing about it. You're hearing all these podcasts talk about all of these different topics. You would think everybody could start a business. Everybody could invest in the stock market. Everybody, like, there's all these different areas where you're hearing it every single day. And I think that's where the teacher still comes in. I think that's where we, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's where our value is. Go ahead, talk to me. You was about to say something.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Hey, we could go on and on. I think this is a good place for us to transition to the plan of action, because you said this is where the teacher comes in. Mm-hmm. And I've added another component to resolve, every single C-Talk episode. That's not, and it's the homework. So sometimes people are able to do the plan of action and homework all in one. It's not a challenge or anything, but based on what we talked about today, as we walk away, in education, we call it the exit ticket, you know what I'm saying? Or the formative assessment. As we walk away, what do you think the plan of action is as we walk away, Anthony?
I mean, I like how we ended on the affirmations. How can we use hip hop to bring people to the table, right? In a fluid, respectful way, in a productive way. So I know that's a question, but as I'm thinking about developing lessons, using hip hop going forward, remembering that it can be something that brings us together, right? Because even in this conversation with you, I've talked about a lot of the negativity, and not realizing that at many different points in our history, in the last 50 years, I should say, right, hip hop has brought us together. It's even brought suburbs together with, right, and so finding ways to support those artists, and utilizing education and hip hop together to build community. But how do you do that, right, without the institutions? And I know we've ended on that a few times. So I think ultimately it's building the institutions, right, to where we can have the say necessary to not exclude, and to embed those principles that are needed to ensure that the positivity within hip hop is the focus, even as we're sharing it with our kids,
Thank you for that. To add on to what you said, man, I think the plan of action should be, when we talk about institutions, to start looking at hip hop as an institution. And how you do that is there is a local chapter of the Zulu Nation in your city, probably. Mm-hmm. We have one. My guy Danny, he runs the one here. He is one of the leaders of the hip hop Zulu Nation chapter here in Seattle, Washington. So I think that would be good, and sit down with one of them and pick out the ear and talk about the history. I know what has happened in recent history with Afrika Bambaataa and the accusations. It has put a little bit of shade on the Zulu Nation, but that also is a part of my plan of action, is to look beyond that and try to find out what was the reason why the Zulu Nation was created in the first place. Perfect. And I think that you'll be able to transcend who is a cult leader. A lot of people refer to him as just a cult leader because they were saying that he was using hip hop as a recruitment tool to do these things that he allegedly did. I would also, for homework, I would say, think of a social issue. And you brought up one, and we've talked about it prior to us going live, like substance abuse. Let's just take that. Pull up a song and listen for substance abuse. Write down what they're talking about. Take some keywords out of there, build a lexicon, and start Googling. You know, a lot of people didn't know what lean was until they listened to a hip hop song. A lot of people didn't know it was the combination of cough syrup and Sprite. And then so once you start looking up what is in cough syrup, like the ingredients, come on, man, that's your homework, man. You will start to understand that hip hop is an incredible teacher. Yep. And we're already using our Googles. You just gotta, hip hop teaches you to use your Googles in a different way.
Boy.
And here's one last thing I want to do, man, because I can keep going on with the homework because I nerd out on this stuff. Hey, man, pull up E40, please, and look at how many words this man has created.
Yep.
When you say po-po, and just look at how many words that hip hop has created for you to use as a way to disguise of what you're trying to do to, you know what I'm saying? Do what you need to do. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Here come one time, here come 12.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And it's a different thing, like saying something is filthy or talking about, oh, he got a hoopty. Like, I'm just thinking about words that come out of Seattle. Like, man, give Sir Mix-a-Lot his props, man. I know people got problems with Sir Mix-a-Lot, but man, come on, man. He gave us Swap Meet Louie, man. Come on, man. How many times did that come up in our, man, Swap Meet Louie? You know what I'm saying? He had a song about beepers.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure he came up with the word hoopty, man, too. But I'm just saying, just your homework is also, man, just create a lexicon and a vocabulary based off of hip hop music. Boy. I think that would be dope. Boy. But anyways, you know how we do in C Talk. You know, again, if you want to donate to what we do here at C Talk, you know what I'm saying? Cash App, $ Logic, I'm in Venmo at Logic, I'm in. That money's going to go towards, you know, our time, you know, because slavery is over. We, you know, you paid attention, so why don't you pay attention? You know what I'm saying? But also, we might want to have some memorabilia. This man might want to write a book. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to put his Cash App and his Venmo in the comments if he gives it to me and whatnot, because it's important, man. Hey, Anthony, it's been great, man. It's been a great hour and 17 minutes and counting. We got to do a part 2, man. I want us to have a series of conversations, man. I really admire you and appreciate what you're doing, man. And from one Black educator to another, man, hey, man, you don't see a lot of Black male educators, man. And I commend you, man. Love you, brother.
I love you too, man. I just appreciate it, and I'm honored. And I know I told you on the phone I will not get emotional, but starting the journey 9 years ago, seeing your posts, seeing how you conducted yourself, your writing, you know, I've admired you for a very long time, and I appreciate you for your part in inspiring me to get into education, because you definitely.
Oh, man. So man, that means a lot, man. Love, man. Each one teach one. All right, man, we out.